automatically do audio?
I don't know. We'll find out. We'll find out today.
It's for Kira and Anika, I think, is the two. Oh, and Callie. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I believe it's recording. Yeah, it's recording, and they may have audio. They may not. Not my. That's their fault. It's their fault,
Yeah,
right?
totally.
For helping young kids in discovery and leading them down the right path, right? That's what they're doing, right? That's what they get, and then that's what Callie gets for being in the guard.
Yep.
She gets a recording without sound. Okay. All right. So basic layout, right? And so there's so many things to cover, right? You're gonna leave this, you're gonna be like, what the fuck is happening, right? It's fine. Actually, I can do it in 20 minutes, even 20 minutes you can't do it. Basic layout, how to get into it, create the thing. And so there's a couple things. There's this command window, and then there's also an editor. Down in the command window, you can type all sorts of stuff, 2 + 2, and then it could just serve as a calculator. I also gave you 2 handouts. One is the intro to MATLAB, kind of gives you some general inputs that you can use and general functions that you can use, and give you some examples of plotting and stuff like that. So that's why I would kind of start with doing that stuff. So down here, the thing if you type down here, there's no memory of this. So you just kind of run it once and then it just does the calculation and goes from there. Up here in these editors is where you're gonna have the memory stuff, right? Up here is where you can do your coding. Up in the editor, it's just, all it is just a text editor, and you just type in all the text, and then you you analyze it afterwards. And really what it's doing is it's copying that, pasting it down here, running it, and then putting the output, right? There's 2 different types of files. There's a .m and a .mlx. .m's run a lot smoother. .mlx's, the output shows up in line. That's one of the problems with MATLAB in the past, is if I have a .m and I run a program up here, it runs really smooth, but all my output shows up in another location down here in the command window. The .mlx file, everything shows up, all the calculations show up in there. So if you're doing, probably for Tim's homework, doing a .mlx would probably work best because it's nice to see it, and it's also prettier when it shows up in the .mlx. But up here is where you could do things like, set variables, a = 5, b = 7, and then I go a plus b, and I kind of run it. And again, when I run it, I just hit this button here, and then we should see right there. There's my output, and there you can kind of change where your output's at. It could be over on the right, or these little buttons over here. You can make it be right below it as you go along. And then there's another one where I don't know what the third option is. I don't know. It doesn't have it at all. What is that third one?
Answers only.
Yeah. Oh, answers only. That's weird. I'm not supposed to do that. Okay. So then that's the basic thing. There's also all sorts of functions built into this thing as well. Sines and cosines and all of that stuff, right? All those things are included. You also have plotting, and I give you some examples how to plot things, right? And so what you would do, right, if you're using ChatGPT to help you, is it's going to give you the output, you copy it, you paste it here, you hit run, and then you look to see what the output is. Right? That's kind of, and then if it doesn't give you the output you want, you go back to ChatGPT and say, hey, fucker, you messed up. Like, come on, what are you doing to me here, right? And then also I want to point out, if you're using ChatGPT, don't try to hide it. Right, because it's going to be really clear, because ChatGPT is really good, and it comments everything, and it lays out things, and it also doesn't do the most efficient way either, right? It does robust, solutions on everything, and then it's but it also does make mistakes, and so you got to be really careful with that, right? Let me see what else I want to say about this.
It's also good at explaining functions. And,
yes. Yeah, right. How to use this? How to use?
Yep. Ask it for the solution for the homework. Okay, not that I can't keep you from doing that, but figuring out taking an inverse of a matrix and what's the syntax look like, and
yes.
What is it doing in the background, so you
yes.
can understand the actual steps, which would be important.
Look at what I'm supposed to cover here. Basic commands,
and
basic math, variables,
chat is
top
an
bottom working.
amazing resource, but there is a little question mark up there in the top ribbon.
You're the help.
There is a help file
yep.
here as well.
It's really good.
Super helpful. You can search it and find different functions.
Yep, and then they also in there have examples of
yep.
using those different functions and stuff like that as you go through.
I find if you use those two things together,
yeah,
it helps a lot.
Right.
As in finding, in the tutorials, in the write-up where it is, and then having, LLMs explain to me what that technical jargon is.
Yeah, agreed.
Yep. And then the basic MATLAB, the way it works, right? And there's also other things in there like these stepping functions like for loops and while loops where it just kind of goes through and it, right? And those are really powerful to use. I think you would use those in your homework, like assembling the stiffness matrix will be.
Initials, like
Yep.
the size of the matrix.
Yep. It'll go through and it'll create those things for you. So how to use those are included in that thing and the help and ChatGPT. There's all sorts of ways to get those. Those for loops and while loops and if statements, those are all the foundations to it. And they're really easy to use, very forgiving syntax. But the basic way to use MATLAB, it's all numeric, right? Everything has a number value, right? If I haven't, like, A is equal to 5, B is equal to 7, A plus B, everything's been defined. If I then try to come in here and say, plus C, and I try to run the same thing, it's like, what the hell is C? I don't know what C is, right? It doesn't know how to handle C as being a variable, right? Does that mean you can't use that? You absolutely can. You can use MATLAB, but you have to do a little bit different in the syntax. You have to go through and tell things like, oh, by the way, C is going to be a variable. I think there's going to be a symbol rather. And so I think it's just sim C. I predefine it like that. Sims C, right? So then I've defined it and said, hey, look, I'm going to give you a C later on, but that's just going to be a symbol. And then when I do that, then it knows that it's going to be a symbol, and then it can handle it, right? Really what's happening in the background is Maple. There's like maples running in the background and stuff. And it gets a little weird. It gets a little getting used to, but you could do it, right? And so let me just show you the solution to your homework. Do I have it here? Oh, I closed it. No, I did it. Beams. And this is what you're doing, right, Timothy?
Not for a beam.
Oh, you're not doing it for a beam? Well, because this is how
We
it
actually
did.
solved differential equations, so yeah.
Yeah. So this is what I did. This is how I did to get my shape functions. Just going to show you, right? So I had to come in and I labeled all these things. So this is just going to be symbols, right? So I went through and I said, hey, all these things are going to be symbols. And so now I could use those things, okay? Then I made a differential equation, right? So for a beam, you're solving EIU prime 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 is equal to 0. Then I come in and say the end conditions, right? My boundary conditions are going to be these variables. And then I said, do the differential solving of this equation given these boundary conditions. And this is my overall displacement equation. And then I said, let me pull out the parts that are associated with displacements, with the displacements and the rotations. And that's what it did. It pulled out the components associated with each one of these things. That is shape function 1, shape function 2, 3, and 4. So those are the different shape functions for each one of these things. And then I went down and plotted them. I think you did talk about this, right? How the shape functions are equal to 1 for that particular variable and 0 everywhere else, right? So these are kind of the different shape functions for the rotations and the displacements. And so anyways, I mean, just showing you like the use of symbolics is really nice, right? If I was trying to do this by hand, right? You imagine trying to solve a fourth order differential equation with these different boundary conditions by hand, right? Tim would probably do it. He probably like your math class would make you do it, right? Your math class would make you solve that differential equation, which is so dumb, right? But instead, you could use this tool to help you solve it, right? And then, like I said, the two handouts I gave you. One was just basic commands. The other one was symbolic, right? And so how to use the basic commands for the symbolic toolbox, right? The other thing to be really careful of is variables. Like once you've defined the variables, right? Like, I mean, over here I said what A and B were. A is something. So even if I'm outside of that equation, I came back over to Frey, right? A is equal to something, and B is equal to something, and C is still a symbol, right? You just gotta be careful that those variables are always there. And then where I see people run into problems is they have like a legacy variable used for some other function that gets like transferred over to the other one. So every once in a while you should clear your variables, and the command there is just clear, and it'll wipe out all variables, right? So A now doesn't know what A is because I've cleared those variables. And so a lot of times I start my programming just right at the beginning, right here, right? Clear, right? It's right off the bat, just say, I'm going to do this. Let me just clear all these things, okay?
Can you have it show you a window?
Yeah, there you can. I don't know where it's at. It's usually over on the right-hand side there.
That's what I was like, I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
Is it workspace? Well, you cleared everything.
I did clear. Is equal to 5. Yeah. So I think sometimes by default, I think it's there, but I never look at it. So you can see what variables are floating around and stuff. Back in the day when Timothy took classes with me, he had no ChatGPT to help, and then so we have to revise it a little bit because one of the reasons to why you make you do this programming so that you learn it, right? Like you're struggling to get your program to work, and in the process you're learning like this is what's happening. That I need to fully understand how this matrix is being assembled, and I'm going through that process, and it's beautiful. But then now you get stripped of that because you just say, hey, tell me this, and it's like, and then it's like you didn't learn anything in the process, right? Except for how to copy from ChatGPT and post it in here. So I'll let Tim work out how you want to. I mean, I just was like, just do it. You know, like just send it. Just give me the solutions, right? Like, but also learn. Right?
Mine still works.
Your gunner still works? You had a fancy gunner. What else here? Clearing command, cells. Oh, you can also set up, that's the other thing I guess maybe mention into when you're writing in here. Sometimes it's helpful is you can create these cells, and you do that so that you kind of keep your everything separate. You do a space or a percent and say, you know, homework number 2, right? And it kind of keeps it separate, and so I can kind of run the stuff up at the top separate from the stuff down below. That's kind of nice to say. I think there's some other commands that you could use up there to create those different cells. Those are kind of helpful, right? Plotting, I give you some examples how to plot. Plotting gets a little weird, right? Because again, if you plot like a normal function, not symbolic, everything has to have numbers. So you're just plotting numbers, like in Excel. Like in Excel, you have all these numbers defined, and you plot it. You're just plotting a scatter plot is what you're doing. You can plot symbolic values as well, and then there's a different command for that, and I give you how to do that and stuff as well, right? Let me just show you, this is the other, what you're working up to, right? This is a truss example. I went through and I created all my shape functions and my matrix. I showed it all symbolically on how I did it, and then I went through and I apply it where it goes through and assembles. You're gonna be making some sort of stiffness matrix, and then it assembles the global stiffness matrix based off of it, and then does an analysis. And then all this other stuff is associated with plots. Just to show you like how good I am at MATLAB. This is my truss analysis, right? As you go through and I apply my loads on this truss, and it shows the deflected shape of the forces in there and the reactions. But that's all that stuff we did in Structures 1. It's really matrix analysis is what we called it, but really it's finite element analysis. And it's a different way to get there, but when you get there, it's the exact same equations. It's the exact same matrix that you end up with. And the same thing with your frame elements. You're going to derive them slightly different with some virtual work garbage, right? But really, you end up at the same exact place with the same matrix at the end, and then the whole process of assembling and all that stuff is what we learned back in Structures 1. So that's what smart people learned back in Structures 1. You took Structures 1.
I didn't go to school here.
I know, but somewhere you did, right? Yeah, you took Structures 1. You did. Not to say you're not smart. Well, you kind of aren't because you've chosen wrong and gone with geotech. So who's your advisor?
Gastronaut.
Okay. Are you doing research? You doing TA? No, you working in town?
In town?
Yeah. I'm just curious, right? So if you had like an internship someplace or something like that, you know? All right. Any questions about it? I know it's just 20 minutes. It's about all you can kind of, you know, and then I rely on those handouts to go from there. And then those of you that have taken my class, then you'll be fine. This will be cake for you, except for the understanding part. Right? The understanding part. I do think it can handle all that. So have you tried putting your homework in the ChatGPT and say? But do more than that, right? Learn some.
Please do.
Learn some stuff out of there, right? Maybe just
you're gonna need to do more than that.
You don't want to ChatGPT help us?
right, because at some point you're gonna have an exam on it, right? And then if you're just like, well, what you do is you type this into ChatGPT, right? Right. So, because if all we were worried about right? Like you're here to learn how to do finite elements so that you're better at using the program. Because if we didn't care about that, we would just start with the program and be like, yeah, why make you put it into ChatGPT to get your coding so that I can put it into the, right? Like it's, yeah, you do what's best for you, and that's learn how to do it. How's that for it?
And collaboration is encouraged, right? So.
But don't just copy someone else's.
No.
And then,
I did not expect to see two of the same.
dude, I've had that before. Where they don't even change the variables. They just like turn in exactly the same code. I was like, come on, right?
Do you just like extract that sheet and that's what you would submit, or you would like extract?
Oh, great question.
Parts or like the file? Or?
So when you go to print it, like it'll print out nice and beautiful. Like, can you print that, Mike, to show?
This is with the .mlx.
Just do what Gavin does in the screenshot.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you for throwing that in. Thank you for throwing that some shade, Sean. Kevin. So there's what if you do a .mlx, if you do a .mlx, it'll look like this, right?
And so you can define those nice cells and have nice, headings and.
Yep. Right, and you can come back afterwards and kind of fill in the sides, like if you wanted to
Or you can
document stuff.
take this PDF and put it into GoodNotes or on your tablet and then write notes.
Yes. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Kind of the discussion stuff off to the side, right? I would do that. What I didn't like on the last class I had was like Kyle here would just do comments as a comment.
That's what they're there for. That's what they're there for.
No, that's to comment your code, not answer the question. And then
print text for the
don't do that either. Don't do the fprint. You're doing like fprintf, and so the output was like the.
It would be a
was
text box, and I would
Just
highlight it. That's the answer.
Put it into your note taking thing, and
Why is that
then
better?
it's easier to see it because I'm just like looking through the
highlighted
code. Fucking dock this motherfucker, dude. Yeah, like get him. I'm just telling you, I didn't like it in there. I just like answering like just. I don't know.
The answer.
I don't know. But don't do what Gavin did. He just did random screenshots, and then you go to grade it in GradeScope, and it's like a thing this big, and then a thing this big, and then a thing this big, and they're just like, the hell, like.
On my side, it looked very good.
Yeah, it looks terrible on my side. Though that's just like, why are you screenshotting? You have a tablet right there. Just take it and put it in, and then we had to have a talk. It's like, well, then put it in a Word document then, and then just submit the Word document so everything's the right size.
I didn't know that.
Maybe a
On my side, it
non-issue
looked
now,
good.
he's got a tablet.
Yeah.
I still want to do it.
Do it, Gavin. Do it. Let him suffer through it as well.
I still don't see the problem with answering.
And so, so the other thing, if you do it as a .m, it's not this pretty, unless you do this thing called publish. And so one of the commands in here is, in MATLAB here, there's something up at the top says something about publish.
Isn't it under print and publish or not? The drop down under the print.
Timothy?
That's not it.
Anyways.
Never mind.
Oh, is it because it's not a .m? It might be because it's not a .m file. It's not showing up in here.
Oh.
If it was a .m, I think you there's a thing that says publish, and then it gives you some options of publishing. Because remember, if you do a .m, the answers are down here, and then your figures show up as pop-outs, like pop-out figures. And then, but if you do publish, it'll go through and run the whole thing, and it'll kind of tie the two together. Yes, William.
So when does it make sense to use a .m versus .mlx?
When did you? There was like if you're doing stuff really complicated that it involves a lot of like my vortexes, right? Where there's those things take like 5 minutes to run. Like you're not going to be running that inside of .mlx. It just gets too complicated. There was some weird stuff that was happening. Like when sometimes the plots wouldn't update like the way they were supposed to, and then like if you're trying to show an animation of something where things are like animating, that .mlx was just a pain in the ass. The .m was just a lot cleaner at running. So. Because there's stuff that's going on. I mean, I'm pretty sure behind the scenes, it's still copying this, running it down here, taking that output, shoving it into the thing up above. Like there's some programming associated with that. And so that's why it just doesn't run as smooth. Any other questions? Good luck to you.
So, it's due Friday, right? So I don't expect to see all of you on Thursday talking about all of this, right? So maybe start this a little early, make sure
Yeah.
you've got, Matt